Well, hey guys, this is John. I'm at the Eau Claire Supercharger and I just finished charging up, got the car to 100% state of charge because I'm going to be making a 249 mile trip from Eau Claire, Wisconsin to northern Minnesota. One charging stop in Duluth, currently minus 12 degrees Celsius outside air temperature. So we're gonna get in the car, get on the road, see how fast we can make this trip without draining the battery too much, and so let's get going. So we're currently at 100% state of charge, and when we look at that in terms of expected range for the battery, it's 288 miles. The total distance of this trip is 249 miles. However, it does say we do require charging to get to our destination, and we'll be checking in periodically on the Energy app to see how well we're doing versus what the car is projecting what it's going to do initially. So with that, we're going to get going. We're about 60 miles into our drive right now, and I just wanted to do a quick check-in to see how things are going. We're about halfway from our initial part of our trip in Eau Claire to Duluth, Minnesota. Maybe just a little under halfway. If we look at the Energy app, we're projecting 118 miles of range. Our average watt hours per mile, which is efficiency, has kind of settled in now to about 377 watt hours per mile over the last 30 miles. I look at the drive, it's showing that I've consumed about 36% of the battery. Most of that has been due to driving. The climate's actually been consuming battery, but better than the car initially projected. So we're getting a green bar right here on that. But we can see for most of the trip, the driving and everything else with efficiency has been less than what the car initially projected. That being said, I do still see that our projection for amount of energy on a destination is just over 7%. So that is up from previously when we were just leaving Eau Claire. It did show between 4 and 6% state of charge arriving at the Supercharger. We do have 100 miles remaining to go to get to the Supercharger. And again, with projected range using current energy consumption of 118 miles, that leaves us 18 miles to spare. So that's pretty good in terms of margin. I'm comfortable with that. The outside air temperature did drop just a little bit. It's minus 18 degrees Celsius. And for those in the United States, that's 0 degrees Fahrenheit. So do another check-in as we come into the stretch getting right into Duluth. Probably roll the cameras a little bit through Superior and just talk about how we've been doing, and then we'll check in right at the Supercharger. Alright, as promised, we are coming into Superior and we're going to do that check-in. Currently the temperature is minus 17 degrees centigrade. That is 1 degree above Fahrenheit. The battery has started to precondition now for charging, as we can see on the top of the screen here. And we're showing 11% state of charge currently coming into Superior. It's showing that arriving on our destination, we are going to be at 4% state of charge. So if we look here at the energy utilization, our average consumption, average efficiency over the last 30 miles has been 368 watt hours per mile. So it continues to improve, and I would expect some of that coming into Superior because it is mostly downhill coming into the city here. If I look at the drive statistics, you can see just a little bit of a degradation on the line. We're below where the gray line is. So the orange line is where we're at, our actual observed efficiency and energy utilization. The gray line is what was projected. We are going to arrive at the Duluth Supercharger with about a 4% state of charge remaining. Looking at what's using that. The driving definitely has been using more than what was predicted. Part of that has been I've been driving at about 69 miles an hour for most of the trip. If I would slow it down to about 65 or less, I would have been able to bring this number down. The climate, however, has been continuing to do better than projected, and that's surprising to me because the heater in the car is keeping the car temperature very comfortable for me. Part of that too is that I've been using the seat heater just to supplement the ambient air temperature, and I do have it set for automatic with a high fan, and currently I'm not hearing a lot of the fan right now, so it has brought the cabin to the appropriate temperature and has maintained it there using less energy than what it initially thought it was going to. We are starting to see battery conditioning come into play here. That's using 3% more than what was projected initially, and I would expect to see that because, again, we are preconditioning the battery for the supercharge, and also it does take some energy during the drive to maintain the battery at an operating temperature that keeps the car operating efficiently. Elevation, not much change in elevation on this trip. We did have a couple of hills, and then everything else being the electronics in the car, and those are pretty negligible as well. So again, consumption, just looking at that, showing 19 miles of range using our last 30-mile average, 19 miles of range remaining, and for this trip we have 8.6 miles to go to get to the supercharger. So everything's looking really good for this trip. It does show that the car has great energy prediction capability, which will allow you to drive in cold climates like this, monitoring how the battery's doing and allowing you to adjust your driving style and energy utilization to stretch your distance and extend the range to the range that you need. All right, the charging is done. We just brought it up to 78% state of charge. So at 78%, remaining distance on this trip is 94 miles. The current outside air temperature here in Duluth is minus 17 degrees Celsius, and that's 2 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm going to put the consumption tab on and show the last 5 miles. So you can see the actual energy utilization here as we leave Duluth. Right now we are showing, just for the last 5 miles, 612 watt-hours per mile, which is insanely inefficient. So average on this trip so far, I just want to pull that up using the trip meter. We're showing 392 watt-hours per mile. 392 watt-hours per mile. Just under 400. That's pretty inefficient, but it's expected with cold weather driving and having to in the car having to keep the battery warm and precondition the battery for charging. So we're just going to take a quick peek here at the rest of our trip. We're heading away from Lake Superior right now in Duluth, going inland. We will continue on up the hill by the Duluth airport, and then from that point most of our trip will be pretty flat. Again, total distance for this is 94 miles, 93 miles now. And that is our destination. Not too far from the Canadian-US border, which is right here. And here we are continuing up the hill. Just going to let the cameras roll for a little bit. We'll do a check-in about 30 miles to our destination and give you an energy update then, and then we'll do a final one at the end of the trip and let you know how we did for the entire trip. are 30 miles from our destination. There's something interesting that happened. This happened in the last drive that I had too, that when I left the Supercharger, initially it thought we were going to arrive, today initially it thought we were going to arrive at 17% state of charge, and then it jumped up after a few miles. So I'm not sure if it's basing that estimate off of the previous miles that I was driving into the Supercharger and the relatively low efficiency that the car had during that segment of the drive. So if I look at the energy app, we can see that during the last part of this drive, I've been going mostly downhill, so my energy utilization has been lower than normal. The last 30-mile average efficiency is 327 watt-hours per mile. When I look at the graph to show how we've been doing in this part of the drive, it's actually been green most of the way, so it's been using less energy than it predicted. So it's actually been more efficient on this portion of the drive. And I can see here the initial projection that is under 20%, and our new reprojection has us arriving at about a 28% state of charge at the destination. So driving, of the 36.8% that we've used so far in the battery, of the total battery capacity, 37%, driving has taken up 31.5% of that. Climate, 2.1%. Battery conditioning, very minimal, 0.1%. Elevation, 2.2%, and everything else is showing 1%. So again, 28% state of charge in the destination. Looking at the overall efficiency on this trip, 377 watt-hours per mile, 79 kilowatt-hours used. And the average lifetime for this vehicle is 322 watt-hours per mile. So 377 versus 322, it's actually not too bad. Considering that it's minus 19 degrees Celsius, and converting that over for Fahrenheit, that is minus 1 degree Fahrenheit. So we're on our way for the last leg of the trip. Should be there in just under half an hour. We'll do a final check-in at the end and a summary and wrap-up, let you know how we did. Alright guys, well here we are 1 mile to our destination. We're just going to do a quick last check here of our energy consumption. So for this leg of the journey, which was a total of 95 miles, we used 53.2% of the battery for the trip, and for most of it the driving was better than predicted. You can see the green shaded area here. That means that our energy utilization has been better than what the vehicle had anticipated at the start of the trip. We're arriving at our destination at a 25% state of charge with the battery. Climate used less than predicted, but it did use 2.8% of the total charge. Battery conditioning, negligible. Elevation, 2.3%, and everything else 1.4%. For the last 30-mile consumption, our average energy efficiency was 358 watt-hours per mile. And for the trip, if we take a look here, for the total distance that I used the trip meter is 239 miles. I started it a few miles late. We used 90 kilowatt hours. The average energy for the trip was 375 watt hours per mile, and that compares with 322 watt hours per mile for the overall lifetime efficiency of the car. So that's going to wrap it up for this drive. It's nice and toasty warm inside the car. Absolutely no complaints as far as climate goes. And going to get inside, get some rest for the night. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you on the next one.